I'm not the first victim that he had. I mean, he knows that. It's an unwritten rule. You don't go to the authorities. My abuser quickly went then and confessed. And that's when my mom and dad found out, and they basically said, okay, well, you're not going over there anymore. And I think it's such a sad, unfortunate setup. We're in the Swartzentruber world. If you go in and confess as a church member, you get a much lighter sentence, and you're basically saying, oh, I'm sorry, I did something wrong. But it was put on me that I tempted him. I'm 14. He's 28, married with 4 children. But I did the wrong thing. These court proceedings are not easy. When I came in, I felt very intimidated. Some of my supporters wanted me to sit in the front row, and they started opening arguments, and the district attorney said that I was there and I would like to make a statement. And the judge said, sure.
Hey, my name is Shalise Ansola, and this is Cults to Consciousness, where we discuss leaving high-demand religions or organizations and finding healing and independence through awareness and true individual sovereignty. If you're only listening on those podcast platforms and would like to see our faces, go to our YouTube channel at Cults to Consciousness, not only to see the video or have it playing in the background, but it does mean a lot to us when you interact with the post in any sort of way, liking and subscribing, becoming an advocate for these people who are sharing their stories. They're being brave and vulnerable with us today. And also just any sort of comments that you can leave for our guests means so much to them. So today's guest, we are having her back on. I think her video has passed 700,000 views the first time we did the interview. It was incredible. We were talking about the Swartzentruber Amish. And when we asked you guys, what do you want to see for our 200th episode? So many people said follow-ups. We want to see how your guests are doing now. So this is a perfect opportunity because she was put back in the news. She contacted me, let me know what was going on. So we're going to give you a little bit of a rundown of her story. So you don't necessarily have to watch the first episode before continuing on with this one, but you're definitely going to want to go back if you haven't already and hear her entire full story in depth. So thank you so much for coming, Lizzie.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on again. I'm absolutely grateful for you to have me on.
Of course, yes. And your book was one of my favorite memoirs that I have read so far for the channel, Behind Blue Curtains. Do you have it with you? I realize I don't have a physical copy. I think I either read it on Kindle or listened to it. Do you have a copy to show everybody?
I do not.
Oh, it's fine.
We'll put it in the link. A lot of times I have it on that ladder that's right behind me. And I also, I was packing up. I'm going to a book event in California, and that's why I kind of reconnected with you. For people that don't know who I am, I published Behind Blue Curtains exactly 4 years ago.
So cool.
It is done way better than, my publisher, anybody expected. But the book is about me growing up in the Swartzentruber Amish. I'm not the first person to publish a book about that, but I think I'm one of the first people to really dive into the grooming aspect and the gaslighting and the control that they have over you. And so I'm so grateful that that's what I did.
Yeah, it's such a great book. It's written so well. And it really paints a picture of what you went through as a child, the good things and the bad. And so I wanted to just give a little bit of an overview of your story for those who aren't familiar so that this next part makes a little bit more sense, because we're going to be talking about your abuser, their sentence, how you had to go back into the court system, what it's like for a survivor to be in the court system at all, trying to get justice for their abuser's crimes, and just what that's been like for you. And as a victim's advocate now, where you help other people through the court system, because it's so grueling. And that's not to discourage anybody from seeking justice, but just to give a clear picture and help people understand what goes into it or what could go into it if they do choose to go that direction. So your story in your book, I mean, in the first episode, we dive into so many little specific stories, but I think the The main theme and something that we are mostly here today is to talk about your abuser in the sense of the justice you are seeking. So, I mean, we talk about the reasons, and I want to get your opinions too of why sexual abuse is so prevalent among these communities. I personally, from my perspective, having interviewed many people from the plain communities, Amish, Mennonite, it seems mostly it's lack of sex education and so much isolation. And so things go awry. The punishments don't necessarily match the crime. The perfect storm for a predator's paradise. So, something that you would experience and you talk about in your book is the abuse started as early as 6 years old, right? All the way up until 14.
It is, and thank you for that. I truly believe that I will never be able to prove it, but yes, I was definitely the first memory I have is at 6. But I believe I was abused before as an infant. I have all those symptoms, or what a therapist would diagnose. When you're abused from such a young age, it's so damaging, such a traumatic event for you. And it actually, I'm not a therapist, but it actually stunts your certain things that you're supposed to be able to go through as a young child and adult. I mean, I was influenced by so much of the culture. Swartzentruber Amish, if somebody doesn't know, they really, they really are the strictest Amish that there is. I mean, there's so many different Amish, so many different plain people, but they pride themselves on being the humblest of the humble. Like you don't have any modern conveniences now. Um, Today, the Swartzentruber Amish still are out there, but they've become very, very few. Even the community I come from actually does not have a acting bishop. I think it's because they're so strict, and unfortunately, people are, becoming more aware. They go to the library and they read books and they do things, and they're aware that there's so many other Amish out there. You know what I mean? And I talk about it in my book. I said that I didn't know there was any other Amish until I was a young teenager because I was so sheltered. But there's so many Amish, and there's so many good things that I could say, from what I learned and what I still do today. I'm grateful that I grew up Amish. I just wish it wouldn't have all that abuse.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time to mention, and I want to hear your opinion on this too. We are by no means trying to say, hey guys, all of the Amish are bad people and you should watch out for them, or all of the Amish are doing things wrong, or these are no blanket statements. What we do on this show, if you guys have been here for a while, is you understand that we look at patterns of manipulation and control within high control groups and try and figure out ways in which we can make them healthier, or ways in which we can empower people, and ways in which we can reduce the amount of abuse, even just through awareness, because I think education is so important. And so when we talk about the patterns and the ways in which abuse is more prevalent in these groups, it's not to demonize the groups, it's to point out how they could do better and how we can help those who are coming out of them kind of acclimate into society and understand how the world works in a little bit of a different way. So I just wanted to point that out there because we never want to make anyone feel that we are putting down entire groups of people or demonizing them in any way.
That's a really good point. Thank you for saying that. And I think that that is probably one of the things that I've gotten the most backlash on, is that I'm sharing my experience. It's what I grew up with, what I seen, what I in my community. But yet I will go on another hand and say, I was just at my mother-in-law's funeral in a different Amish community, still Swartzentruber. But you know what? Everybody was kind. Nobody was disrespectful to me directly. It was something I knew would eventually happen, but you hope you don't have to be there.
Yeah, and I definitely want to get into that part of your story as well, because I think it's important to talk about the after effects of leaving a high control group and needing to go back for some reason, and the ways in which it can affect you. First, I want to get a little bit more into your story before you left the Amish so that we can talk about how you are advocating for yourself now. So, We go into detail in the first episode about the intense grooming from your employer. So it's very common for families to hire a young girl to come and help them because they have so many children. They need a maid or a mod, I think, as they call it.
Mhm.
And you were one of those girls. And so it was your employer who was grooming you, love bombing you, and coming on to you in an abusive way. And I think one thing that I wanted to point out before we get into that further is that how you grew up, it was not common for families to give affection to each other, mothers to kids, or families in that way. And so it was something foreign, something that you craved because children crave love and affection. And so because of that, it was, I don't want to say it was easy to fall into, but you were an easy target, is probably the best way to put it, for this man to groom you in such a way to where he could abuse you for years at a time. And that's who we're going to be talking about today. So, is there anything that you want to talk about or mention before we move on from that?
In my community, that was one of the things that happened so often is yes, you become a mod. You said it very nicely, and you basically you're going into their home and you are doing whatever needs to be done. Whether it's somebody has a new baby and you're there helping with that. Um, but definitely, I was put in that position. But I had been doing that since I was probably, I think I said 8 or 9 years old in my book. I worked for my uncle. They had lots of kids, and that's what you did. You just went in, you lived there with them, you helped wherever it was needed. And if anybody doesn't know, Amish typically have very large families, and you go in, you help, you just do what you have to do. And eventually, I came to the point where I was graduated from 8th grade Amish school, and I went to live with this family. I was just expecting to do the same thing. You do these different things, but then, yes, what he did is it's basically Stockholm syndrome. They will, like you said, give you these love bombs. And because I didn't grow up, nobody hugged or kissed me or told me they loved me or, all those different things. And I think anybody that knows a little bit, certain people will thrive okay without that. But other people that need that, you're so thrown into this thing. Now somebody's paying attention to you. You feel like you're needed, you're wanted, you're actually making a difference. So that's what I did. I worked on this farm and this Amish couple that I worked for, and it ended up horribly. To this day, it's just such a, I think many people often don't want to say that, but it is a very common thing I know in my area because I counted up how many I know personally that experience the same thing I did. Unfortunately, many, for whatever reason, choose not to come forward, but I did, and that's how my book came out.
Wow, I'm so sorry that that happened to you. We speak in the first episode about just all the power imbalances going on there. Obviously, adult, child, and then you have employer, employee, and you're living in their home. And something that I wanted to ask you is in this article that just came out that you sent to me, and we'll get to the details of that later, but it said that at some point people had even walked in on the abuse and did nothing. And so I wanted to ask your opinion on why you think that was, if that was just to avoid contention within the Amish community, if it was just a personal thing and they should have reported it, or what you think was going on there.
Well, unfortunately, in the Amish, and this was an Amish person that walked in, it's an unwritten rule. You don't go to the authorities. So what happened was my abuser quickly went then and confessed to the Amish deacons, preachers, what have you. And then that made him be able to get kind of a more of a slap on the hand. You know what I mean? Like he said, "Oh yeah, I'm sorry I did this," but I don't know exactly what he said, but he went and confessed, and then that's when my mom and dad found out, and they basically said, okay, well, you're not going over there anymore. And I think it's such a sad, unfortunate setup. We're in the Swartzentruber world. If you go in and confess as a church member before it gets basically you're told on, you get a much lighter sentence and you're basically saying, oh, I'm sorry. I did something wrong. And I think that my abuser, and I can't prove it, but I've talked to other victims. I'm not the first victim that he had. I mean, he knows that. So
Yeah. So all of this ultimately led to you getting kicked out of the community because you were then branded as someone who was tempting him as this mistress. I mean, he's a married man with children, and now this victim blaming starts. And wasn't it that, and am I remembering correctly that it was putting a lot of pressure on your family and they were just like, we're gonna ship her out of here?
mhm. Yeah, correct. So what ultimately happened, yes. So my abuser went to the church and said, okay, whatever he said, that he did something wrong with me, but it was put on me that I tempted him. I'm 14. He's 28, married with 4 children, but I did the wrong thing. And I think that pe- people still to this day think that and I'm talking about people in my community, still think that I did something. I mean, anybody in your audience of any little education knows that at 14, you cannot consent. You cannot consent. It doesn't matter what was put in place, you can't consent. I mean, and there's each state has a different rule, but at 14, it's clear cut that you can't consent. You can't consent to anything. Doesn't matter. I remember I told somebody one time, I said, we were working in a dairy barn. And I said, I don't care if I was pole dancing on one of the things. I was not able to consent, which I
Yeah.
did not pole dance. But it was just like you just can't consent. And I think that is the biggest misconception I think that I see in the Amish community is that the lack of education and the lack of knowing where where the law comes in or where you're an adult, you're a child. At 14 it's absolutely there's not even any um way to say that, oh, she was an adult. I wasn't.
Yeah. Do you think that in the Amish community specifically, they view children as adults? And the reason I say this is you're only allowed to get up to an eighth grade education, and then you're kind of pushed into the workforce, or in some way you're out kind of in the world. So I'm wondering if that contributes to the overall perception that a 14-year-old should know better, a 14-year-old is of adult status. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that does, because we only go from first to eighth grade. As soon as you're done with eighth grade, I don't want to say that they consider you an adult, but they consider you to be of a different statue. I was visiting my brother-in-law and his family. We were all there. My youngest was there, and they were coming around to ask if wanted coffee. And it's not funny. It's just so like under to understand the culture. My niece looked at me and said, "Is if my youngest child is able to have coffee?" Because there's rules about everything. You have to be out of school before you can have coffee, and it's what I mean. It's just so there's just so many things that there's rules for everything. Yes, once you're out of eighth grade, you are expected to do different things. You wear different clothing. You um yeah, you just have you're in a different category, but yet you're not an adult because remember, Swartzentruber Amish kids have to give all the money they make until they're 21 to their parents, unless you're married.
21?
Then you go back and think that I am responsible at 14, but I can't have my own money until I'm 21
Yeah.
or married.
So this whole thing happens. You get kicked out. I mean, in your book, I was just like, what? This is crazy because you're kicked out, but then no one's there to pick you up. And then you end up at a truck stop and then you almost get sold into a trafficking ring. And then you go to a different, I think, aunt's house. And then she's like, we can't have you here anymore because the other guys were called, the trafficking guys are calling the house. And then the trafficking guys are at the bus stop. Like, you're just barely missing all this danger, and then you land in this beautiful home with these beautiful people who want to take you in and show you the way and all of that, and you're feeling homesick, so you go back into the Amish at 16. And I was just like, no, you were out, so, but I'm not blaming you because you were homesick and I understand that and you missed your family. So I want to get to the part. Fast forward, you leave the Amish for good. You are out, you have a family now. It's 25 years later, and you decide to press charges against your abuser, against the guy you were working for. And you are successful to some capacity. So please tell everybody the absolutely ridiculous sentence that he got. Better than nothing, but the court process, how did that go and what did he get?
Mhm. And thank you. That process really was such a thing that unfortunately I did not have any knowledge. I didn't know what a victim services person was. I didn't know the court system. I didn't know anything. And when I went in to report it, I seriously thought that I was just going to make a report. Nothing would ever really happen. But thankfully, it did. I had a local detective that I talked to, and he took it and he said, "You know what? Because you were employed with them, we can still press charges." It was 28 or something years later, and he said, "We can do this if you want to." And then I met with the district attorney, whom was Marla Stanton. And she was just like, "We can proceed, but do you want to?" And I thought, and I was like, well, why wouldn't we? If I don't proceed at this time, who's ever going to be able to do the charges that are in front of us now? So I said yes, and I had so many supporters that came in and helped just kind of make sure that I was okay, and he got nothing. 45 days in jail,
Hmm.
which I still say, as an Amish person, and I'm smirking, you take an Amish deacon, he has to live in a jail cell for 45 days. That's still a lot more than some people get. And I've also had other people say, it's nothing. It really isn't anything, but 45 days was better than I expected. And obviously it was a plea deal. I had been preparing for court trial, but he took a plea. And his attorney, tried to use all kinds of things of, early plea offers and things like that. But he got 10 years probation. And here I think is what we were wanting to talk about. So
Yeah.
a few months ago, I got a call from the DA, and she said, "Well, you have a few minutes." And I thought, what's she going to talk about? And she said, yes, he's requesting to be taken off of probation after 5 years on good behavior because of the community cease. I don't know what it was called. But anyways, I was like, no, I'm not okay with that. And she's like, well, you're going to have a new judge, and I'm not trying to paraphrase her words, but it's basically not going to be worth your time. He's going to get off on his early probation.
Oh my gosh. Can I pause you for a second just because I would love for you to clarify what this actually entails? So, as a man on probation, what does that mean in tangible form?
So on probation, his restrictions are, I think, number one is firearms. He's a big hunter, so he cannot go out and hunt with a firearm. That's probably the biggest thing. He did not have to register as a sex offender
I don't understand that.
I don't either.
How? How?
Because sex offender law was not in place in Minnesota when he did the crime.
Are you kidding?
I know. Because, number one, remember, I initially went to report my case because I know he has granddaughters at the same age that I'm at. And I have heard things, obviously. We still live by the community. And I've talked to another victim. The community will deny that there's any other victims. I've already talked. I personally know somebody else that was another victim, but they don't want to come forward. They don't want to do these court proceedings are not easy.
It's hard.
It's crucial. It's intimidating. So anyways, so I thought when I was making my report initially, I really did think that it was just, I will make a report and somebody else, unfortunately, will come forward after me. And my case will help that. But what happened? Yes, it was because of some laws that were in place. They said we can prosecute him. And they did, and he did take a plea offer really early on. So after I got the call from the DA, she said, if you dispute your abuser getting off on early probation, we have to ask the judge to have a hearing. I said, absolutely. Absolutely. Ask him for let's have a court date. And the first court hearing was actually delayed because his attorney was in a high profiled case that happened here in Minnesota. And so we eventually got there. It gave me more time to kind of, I think, prepare. And we finally got to the courtroom. I had supporters with me. They were absolutely phenomenal. And I had been pre-warned that a hearing like this, typically the victim does not get to speak. But I had made multiple emails and sent things in. And when we got there, the DA met me in the main area, and she said, I think the judge's gonna let you share a few words, but it can't be anything lengthy. No, it can't be anything, it's just to the point. And it's hard to understand the court system, but I've been there because I'm a victim advocate. So I've been in the courtroom many times. But yet when I came in, I felt very intimidated. Some of my supporters wanted me to sit in the front row. I refused. I just sat in the back row. And they started opening arguments. And the district attorney said, that I was there and I would like to make a statement. And the judge said, sure. Would she like to stand up where she's at or come up right to the front? And I said, I'll come up and stand right next to her. And I made a brief statement of what has happened to me in the last, because he had been on probation 5 years. Things that happened. I've been intimidated. I have been stalked. I've had death threats, all these different things. And because then when you come back and then you look on, he had supporters there. I think that was one of the moments that I knew that whatever the outcome was going to be, that I knew that I was being heard. Because remember, this is a new attorney or a new judge.
Yeah.
That had not heard my case. And I thought, and he went into a lengthy, before he did the sentencing, he went into lengthy, like this and this and this, where he's been and different things. And I thought, yeah, he's good. My abuser's going to get off on probation, but he did not. He did not. He said, no, I'm not going to release you from what the prior judge sentenced you on. You have 10 years probation. He only had 45 days in jail, remember? So, no, yeah. So it went really well. And I am absolutely grateful for the judge.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he educated himself before he heard my case.
Wow. How were you feeling when you went in there? And did you see him in person?
Mhm. Yeah, so unfortunately, um, my supporters, and many of them they're all local people, that did not. None of them were the people that were there for me 5 years ago. But we were trying to park, and remember, this is all small town. Like, we have a small parking lot, and we had actually parked at a certain spot, and then it was like cold and windy, and they're like, "Why don't you move over there?" So we did, and we parked. And here he had his driver and him, and they were there. So I got to see them go in, and I don't know, it's so hard to explain. To me, I could go off on the tangents on his driver. Number 1, his driver is a non-Amish person. Are you kidding me? You are believing him over me? You're taking him to the court hearing? Like, this is a
Yeah.
non-Amish person who's coming in as his driver, and, she was at the first hearing, so I know who she is. I know all of her background. But you, as a non Amish person, are standing with this Amish guy who literally raped. It's not consensual sex at 14 and he was 28. But you're there supporting him? I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can imagine the feeling when you first saw him. I've been in similar situations where it's just like blood drains out of the face and feel like you're going to pass out a little bit, but you have to stay strong and there's anxiety. And do you cry or do there's just so many feelings that can go into that. And I wanted to talk about it because, again, the full transparency of what may occur if you choose to take an abuser to court. It's very emotionally draining and taxing. I'm sure you had to take a few days or even weeks to recover after that.
I did. Thank you. And I, again, want to go back to what you said. We don't want to discourage victims from coming forward. And I want them to know that if you ask, there's so many people that will support you.
Yeah.
So many people that will, but you have to ask, and all these situations are unique. But so many times, there's always in these communities that we grew up in, there's a conflict of, maybe relatives or something. But I want victims and survivors to know that there's so many people we can come in and support you, we can help you. It's not going to be easy, but it's so, to me, it's so beneficial that I can say that I had so many supporters coming in and support me, and they were local.
Yeah.
I'm talking from teachers to everybody that was there supporting me, all were educated way beyond what the community that I came from. But yet they're there willing to stand with me and just, some of them didn't say anything. They were just there. They were helping me. And when we left the courtroom, went out to our car, one of my friends said, let me drive. Let me drive because you're not able to. And so I just want victims and survivors to know that there's a community out there. We will help you and we will stand with you and we will support you as much as we can. It's just unfortunate there's not like a network, you know what I mean, where you can ask people to kind of help.
Yeah, and now you're a victim's advocate, which is amazing. Just being able to take the time out of your day to be an emotional support for someone, even if it may bring up your trauma or trigger you in some way. I think it's really courageous for you to be that rock for someone and to help somebody. And I want to talk about what it was like when this article was published. So you sent it to me and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm in the newspaper. And look, someone wrote about my story. So, how did you find out about that?
Yeah, so I have been with the local school district as a lunch lady for years, and I was there, and they said, "Well, I read about you in the newspaper," and I said, "Really? You read about me in the newspaper?" But I said, "About what?" Because it had already been out about 2 weeks. Um, and they said, "Yeah, about your our probation hearing, that it was denied." And I said, "Oh my goodness." So I went home. I actually couldn't even find it right away. I was like shuffling through. And remember, we're all small town. We have one newspaper. So I knew which one to look for. And I found the article, and I found it was written by this person I had never even heard of. And I reached out to him immediately and I said, "Thank you for, writing the article. How did you know about it?" Like, because he had written everything. Beautifully written. Probably best that he had never even talked to me. He had never even asked me questions. He did research. So I reached out to him and I thanked him for doing the article. I said something about meeting in person. I said, I really appreciate, what you did. I'd love to meet you in person. He's like, "Sure, sure. Let's meet." So we met in person, and that's how I met multiple people that you've interviewed from another cult in Wisconsin.
So crazy.
Like, you can't make this stuff up. I'm like,
Yeah, the Shauna, Wisconsin cult that we
mhm,
covered, right? And
mhm.
wow, talk about insidious. That's another one, guys, that you'll wanna check out after this. It's just we don't have time to go into it,
No.
but that's so wild. Did they know of you
Yeah,
from our channel?
yeah, he's like, "Yeah, I watched the interview." I was like, "Oh, that's where you got a lot of information." Which I thought, but to me, so kinda a backstory. So when I was growing up, remember, we didn't have television, we didn't have TV, we didn't have any. I would read all these books. Do you know what I mean? And most of the books were on, like, just different, I don't wanna put them all cults, but let's just say there were all these different organizations. I read books on these different groups, but I didn't really think, just because of the spectrum of where I was in, like, I didn't even really think that anybody lived by me, but I realized I read books about people right in my neighborhood. Really,
My
Wisconsin is, yeah.
gosh.
So I am I'm so glad on all the work that you're doing in bringing all these different, we all come from so many different cultures, whether it's Mennonite, Amish, or this cult in Wisconsin, or Mormons. There's so many different ones. But you know what we have in common? We were in a community that we thought was the only, like, that was the only true, that was the only truth. That was, we're all the only ones that are right. But then we kind of get out of that and we realize, no, you're not.
Yeah. Isn't it staggering when you realize that everyone else believed the same thing that you did? Because when you're in it, you're like, "Obviously, we're the right one." But then when you leave, you're like, "Wait a second, they think they're right, they think they're right." And it's really humbling when you realize just how everyone thinks they know it all and everyone's just so sure about the quote truth. Yeah, it's so interesting. So, I wanna know what else has happened. So, 4 years since releasing your book, you came on our show, over 700,000 views. What was that impact like? Did you have people reaching out? Did you get any more backlash from your community? How did that affect you ultimately?
On the backlash, I haven't really received that much recently,
Good.
but the people that still reach out to me and they will tell, I just had somebody last week from Pennsylvania. She said, I just seen your interview on a cult of consciousness. And she said it was so amazing. And it's so, even to this day, people still reach out. And that's what I want people to know. Yes, I don't always get to answer, just like you. It's hard to answer every thing
Yeah.
that comes to us, but I truly do. And if I don't answer in an email or message or something, just keep doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, keep trying.
yeah, keep trying. Yeah, so it was such a great experience. And yeah, I've told so many people that's the best. And I don't think it's the best interview that I've ever done, but it has reached so many people. So I'm so thankful.
Yeah. Well, I'm thankful that you came on and shared, and you even sent us this cute little doll. I meant to have it with me that our baby loves. She just carries it around. It's this little Amish doll. It's so cute. Maybe I can go get it. Okay, pause. I'm gonna go get it. Okay, guys, look how cute this little and she had socks on, but they're not on anymore because I have a baby who pulls them off. And she even has, like, the little knickers, guys. Look at the little diaper.
That is made from a community member. And that's like, it's faceless. That's what I grew
Yeah.
up with.
So tell us why. Tell us why it can't have a face.
They go by the 10 Commandments, a graven image.
Uh-huh.
But I could go back through the 10 Commandments then, and let's get specific here on different things. But it's just such a beautiful, I think, memory for me. Growing up, my mom made I have a little sock doll, and I still have it, and that's me and my sister played dolls. That's what we did. We were all thought we're gonna be Amish moms, and so
Yeah, I think it's so cute, and, I was even thinking about tell me if you think this is blasphemous, but I was thinking about adding 2 little eyes to kind of, like, I don't know, honor the
mhm,
tradition, but then
mhm.
also modernize because we're not going by the 10 commandments.
No. No.
But either
I think
way,
it is
she
so
loves
cute.
it,
Oh,
and she
that is
carries it around, and she's just like, it's so cute. So thank you for this wonderful gift, and I'm happy that it's buttons and not straight pins for the safety's sake.
well, and the buttons come in, that's like, if we were to go back, that's where when you get done with 8th grade, then you go from buttons to straight pins.
Oh, that's when the straight
Mhm,
pins come in.
mhm.
Good, so you're not a child with straight pins, because that my goodness.
So it made me feel so good. I'm glad.
It's so nice. Well, tell us about any other updates before we wrap up because I'm sure people want to know how you've been doing. It's been a year, I think, since our last interview. So, any life updates that you want to share?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think that I've done, and I hope that brings other people information, is that I've testified as an expert witness in a case where it was an Amish man with a DV, and I testified, and he got 45 years in prison.
Wow.
Um, but with that, just think about it. Then I also get other, like literally the next night, somebody messaged me and they said, "You better make sure you're okay," because I get threats. You know what I mean? Because I speak out, and I testified, and the guy ended up violating something before he got transferred from the local jail to prison. And I also work with the FBI. I think that is one of the bigger things that I think that I would have never imagined. I worked with the FBI agent. I started helping on a case in Missouri. It was a doctor that I can send pictures. His main clients were Amish. They would come see him. You can only pay cash. And there was years and years and years and years. But eventually, he started being investigated, and the first whistleblower happened to be one of my friends. And she came to me, and she shared what he had done. And then I made a post on Facebook, so other victims came forward. And he ended up getting charged. All this, you can look it up. But in the meantime, I ended up getting contacted by the FBI because this is across the states. I mean, he was in
Nice.
Missouri, but all his victims are all across the board. And as soon as his office got raided and shut down, he stopped eating. Good grief. Um, so he starved himself to death, and he passed away.
Whoa. Really? A doctor chose I'm at a loss for words.
Well, and do you know why he did that?
Why?
Because he's guilty. He's guilty.
Yeah, but what a way to go. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, so that's one of the big I think I remember the first time I talked to the FBI agent, and just remember, I'm from the Swartzentruber community. I was kind of intimidated, and she would ask me questions, and everything right from the beginning. I said everything that I share, because the first question she would ask me is, "Well, how are we going to interview victims? What how do you say certain things?"
Yeah.
And I said, if whatever I share, I said, you have to share it with everybody has a boss. Everybody has somebody that they work with. And she would ask me, and I'm trying to be very non-personable, but she would ask me about body parts and how do you say this and how do you ask these questions. And they literally interviewed over 400 victims. You can't even make this stuff up.
Wow.
And you know what? But just remember, all these victims are mostly just Amish. That was his target. I have the picture. His website would say, the doctor for plain people.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he was targeting them on purpose because, and you talked about this in the first episode, you don't even have names for your own body parts. So, out of curiosity, what did you tell? I love that she is asking how to ask the right questions, how to basically be informed when conducting these interviews so that she doesn't re-traumatize or she
Huh?
knows how to properly conduct it. So, what did you tell her as far as how to, and I guess I want to get specifics because maybe someone watching this will interview in the future a plain person Amish person and know better how to do that.
I just told her, I said, we all were taught there's like nicknames for your PP or your.
You can say the anatomically correct words. We don't mind. So breast, vagina, penis. What are the nicknames for all of that?
Yeah. Well, she said, well, what am I going to say? Because she needed specifics. Like, you're going in to interview victims. And she said, I need to know how to say vagina. And I said, well, you can't say vagina. You have to say, your thing.
Oh, that's what you called it, was just your thing?
The doctor was a chiropractor.
Chiropractor. Uh-huh.
hmm And he would go in and do what he called pelvic manipulate.
Like a pelvic exam, like what a gynecologist should be doing?
hmm But pelvic manipulation, that's what he called it. And he would go in there into rooms with these women and just, he tortured them. I mean, that is not an on, he tortured these women and he had them believe that you need to have this done in order to get most of the time women that had female problems, or let's say the top whistleblower she was taken in there by her mom because her periods were very heavy. So then he would take that and he would yeah, he would absolutely torture them. And the stuff he was able to do with them is just, it's unimaginable. And he would go as far as, like, he would make sure these ladies would go to the bathroom before they came into his office, and he told them, please clean yourself and make sure you're clean down there in that area. And he would totally, absolutely sodomize them. And that is not.
Wow.
And I told the FBI agent when she first called me, and it was long, there's months, everything takes so much time. And I told her, I said, I cried every day for these women until you actually got, they actually raided his office. You can Google it. They raided his office, but then it was months before they actually charged him. And then, yes, what he did is freaking.
That's horrific. I want to know from your perspective, because I understand that usually outside medical care is not called upon when you're in the Amish. You have your babies at home, you have an Amish midwife there. So, do you think that the women who did reach out to, now I just forgot the name, someone who's non-Amish, an English doctor, do you think that they just didn't know that a chiropractor wouldn't be the proper person to go to for an irregular period?
Yeah, and this so-called, he was a chiropractor. Um, he knew exactly what he was doing. Amish actually like non-medical. To them, a chiropractor is not a medical person.
So they don't want a doctor, they want, like, a holistic
Mhm,
approach to
mhm,
something.
mhm. So that's why they went to him, and he figured it out. He only accepted cash. He he like, from everything that I've ever seen, I mean, he treated so many people from the plain community, absolutely nobody from the regular outsiders. He was in a small town. Nobody even knew it was a clinic. Nobody knew because all these Amish came in. And I, I do want to say that one of the biggest things that I think that I got out of this is, unfortunately, because he passed away, these none of these victims are going to have justice.
Yeah.
They've kind of, it's very difficult for them. They should have received justice, but he is a disgusting human being that, he starved himself. He did. He still had people coming to his home and taking care of him, like nurses and things. But these facilities, I think, in my opinion, are happening all over the country. You prey on vulnerable people that are just looking, everybody, working hard in the Amish community. They all have aches and pains and things that happen, and they all want to have as many babies because they go on that Bible boat, fill the world. And so many of these women were trying to get pregnant.
Oh, wow. There's so many layers to dissect. We could probably do an entire episode just on this case and trying to understand the help that they were seeking and obviously how that wasn't what was happening and what was given. Wow, thank you for sharing that case with us. That's really such an insider's look and what goes on behind the scenes, especially in the court system. And anytime because I know you can't talk about while the case is open, anytime after a case closes that you would like to discuss further or even bring people on from it or just give us that perspective, I think all of our viewers would be very appreciative and want to hear more about that. So I know you wanted to discuss what it was like having to go back to the community for a funeral, and such an important topic when you leave a high control group and whether you want to or not, something compels you to go back. And maybe it's feeling of duty, or maybe you truly want to go back and see if you can find some healing. I want to find out what that was like for you because I've had to go back to funerals and I was just a ball of anxiety. It was horrible. So, how was it for you?
Yeah, so unfortunately, yeah, I went back recently to an Amish funeral for my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law lived with my sister-in-law and her husband and their kids. My brother-in-law is an Amish bishop, but I grew up with neighbors with him. We went to visit my mother-in-law, multiple times, and we knew, she was on hospice, and we knew things were coming down. But one of the things that I wanted to point out, and it's so difficult when you're back in your, you're basically back, but you're in the community and you're an outsider. And you know that people warned what you can do, and warned as far as in Lizzie is whatever they've said, reported things that Amish are not supposed to do. And I'm literally sitting there, and yeah, and there's babies screaming everywhere. I've seen more babies, and this is why the Amish community keeps growing, is because they have such large families and they don't believe in birth control. So everybody has babies. There's babies everywhere. I love babies. I hold them. I, do whatever I can, but I look over, and there's a few babies crying. Um, But, she she slaps, this little baby. I'm not gonna speculate how old it was, but it's a baby. It's not even 6 months old. And I knew the second that she did it, I looked over, and she seen that I was looking. And then the next second, we're going, and this is all happening. Amish have all this rules. We're literally getting up, and we're going down on our knees, and there's somebody, a preacher, doing a prayer. The whole time, the baby is screaming and screaming and screaming and screaming. And I'm be very vague. My non-Amish relative had already looked at me and said, I need to go hold that baby. I wasn't about to go, but her husband said, no, wait till after the prayer. Soon as that got done, she got up and she went over and she took that baby, and the baby seriously had ear infection, whatever it was.
Oh,
And I think
no.
the point that I want to make is that I know that other people, including you get put into these positions again in your backyard, in your community, but we still are froze. We're froze. It's freeze or flight. You know,
Like a trauma response, like when you go back to your old environment with the same conditions and the people who may or may not have hurt you, and you're seeing other people being hurt in the ways that you probably were as a child, and you don't feel equipped to stand up or to do anything because the trauma response takes over as a trigger. Is that what you're saying?
yes, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard, and how can we do better? How can I help more? How can I do more conferences? How can I equip more officers, or anywhere I speak? I always say, please, share everything that I'm saying. We're here to help.
Yeah.
And it's so frustrating. The legal system is definitely so flawed, and any officer or district attorney will tell you it's flawed. Um, it has so many loopholes, but yeah, I think that's it. To me, it's sad.
Yeah, I think something that I want to zoom in on just a little bit before we close out this funeral chapter is the fact that even if you have the best of intentions and you want to help every single person in the community that you've left, give yourself grace and knowing that it's not on your shoulders if you can't be in an emotional place to take care of yourself, then you can't help other people as well. So just I guess this is just a statement to anyone who may find themselves back in a controlling environment that you consciously escaped from, got out of, didn't want to look back on. Now you're in it and you feel like you want to save the world, but knowing you got to put your mask on first, you got to know your limits, know your boundaries, know your emotional state of mind before you can help anybody else. So, like you're saying, Lizzie, being able to help on the outside is your strong suit. Being able to be the victim advocate outside of your community, to go to these courthouses with people, to be that shoulder to cry on if someone may need it. All of that is incredible. So, I guess me patting you on the back saying don't feel like you failed anyone at that funeral by not doing more, because even just being there is so tremendously difficult.
Thank you. And just to add just a little bit for the funeral, just remember, everybody in our Amish community is very limited on who they can marry. So everybody's related. Everybody is my cousin. So as I was there, my abusers, two girls, were at this event, and I did not realize it. I was kind of expecting maybe they would be there, or he might even be there. But I was literally in line, and my abuser's two daughters, who are married, were right there. And in the Swartzentruber Amish, what you do is you shake hands with everybody as a greeting. And I was just going along, and I look up, and it was his daughters, two daughters. And they sat right behind me during the service. And I truly believe that they're victims to some extent. Obviously, they didn't do anything um, to me, but why were they there? To me, they knew this is my mother-in-law. I've been married to my husband almost 30 years. They all know I'm going to be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, so then they're there. So I don't know.
Do you think they were there to intimidate you?
Sure they were. Sure they were. On purpose, and report back. Report back. What was she wearing? What did she do? Like, and that's the whole argument I went back to in the courtroom. And the DA said, well, it's difficult to argue that. But I said, they all did this to me. I had multiple incidents. I know I was intimidated. I know I have people that watch what I do. And just remember, we're very rural community. We all know who goes to the post office, we all know who does what. But I will say that I am so glad that I did shake their hands, and I immediately removed myself from that location. And I did not communicate with my abuser's daughters. And we could go on another tangent. My abuser's daughters are probably victims themselves.
Most likely.
Yeah, who knows why they were there or what they were doing.
So I have a question that's probably not very important, but I'm just really curious because I was in the position. You said they were reporting back. What is she wearing? And extremely strict modesty standards for the Amish. I mean, if this doll is any indication, what for Mormonism, you can't show your shoulders and you can't have, you need to cover your knees pretty mostly. So when I went back to this funeral, I knew I was going to be in a Mormon church, and I was like, oh, what do I wear? Like, for the life of me, I didn't want to be modest just for the sake of not being modest. But then I also didn't want to give them fuel to the fire of like, this heathen she's just out there in California being the devil or whatever they want to say. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to wear a spaghetti strap dress. It's beautiful, like super classy, no cleavage or anything. And it's long and flowy. And then I'll just wear a cardigan over. So I have the option, of like, I'm wearing a strapless dress, but I'm covering up in the church, like being respectful. What is the line? What did you wear to the funeral?
So quite interestingly, I wore something very similar, but I had a long dress. Like my dress, black dress, was completely down to my ankles. Actually picked it up when we went to the funeral, because remember, we can't park our cars because we're not Amish. We can't park our cars. So we were down the road, and I had to pick it up. But I wore this dress to my dad. My dad is the picture in the back. I wore the same dress for my dad's funeral almost 10 years ago. Somebody said, I wish I had a dress that long. So it's extremely long, all black. And it had a little bit of an kind of a similar lace thing. So then I even wore, like you said, a cardigan, I wore it over it. Black shoes, no makeup. No,
Okay. So you did adhere to some of the standards, not standing out,
mhm.
but not I mean, you obviously didn't go in an Amish dress, so something that wouldn't make them necessarily upset.
Yep. And here's the other point. So my Amish mother, we knew this was coming. She would pass. She was on hospice since November or something, and when we went down. Um, but they, the first day, she passed away on the Saturday, and Amish have a strict rule. They all know how many days we'll have a funeral, and we came in Sunday, and they made sure my brother-in-law, who's the bishop, said absolutely no phones. Which, number one, there's no service there anyways. It's
Doesn't
like
matter.
it does to me, but he's like, well, I don't want anything live streamed. Or so if you look on any social media, there's nothing about my mother-in-law, because they said, if we find out anybody has a phone, you're all getting kicked out. So no, I wasn't going to take a phone anyways. He ended up at the last Tuesday afternoon. They did thank us for being respectful, which I think is huge. I
Nice.
think that is huge, and I'm glad they can say that. I
Yeah.
wasn't there for any of those reasons. I was there out of respect, and I'm so glad.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you reached out. I love it when our past guests reach out and give us updates, and I'm happy to have done this interview with you, a second one. Guys, absolutely make sure you go check out the first one. So good. And definitely read her book. You went and go got it. So hold up your book, Behind Blue Curtains. Highly recommend. We'll put the links in the description. And what is your social media for people who want to reach out?
Yes, Facebook. I'm old, my kids say. So I'm on Facebook the most, but I have Instagram, X. Yeah, I have, yeah, all the other platforms there is. And just last but not least, people ask me, why behind blue curtains? Okay, we had to have blue curtains. That's a Swartzentruber rule across the board. I'm just grateful, and I'm absolutely thankful that you asked me to be back on your podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And so people understand the intensity. They have to be a very certain shade of blue, or else you have to rip them down and resew them. I remember that distinctly from your book. And I was like, what? This is wild. So, yes, so many great details in there. And we need a Linda listen. I don't think I prepared you for this. Do you have something that you would want to say, either sassy or otherwise?
Yes. So, Linda, everything that I do it's not about me. It's about everybody else that has been in my shoes and um, wants to make a difference. We all want to make a change and make a impact on the world. So please listen. I am here to help.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lizzie. I appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you. I thought about canceling, like,
No.
oh yeah. I woke up at like midnight, and I was like, I have a cold. I have a flu.
Oh, no. Well, thanks for pushing through. We appreciate it.
I'm so grateful that I got to be on your podcast, and I'm sure that you're gonna hit all kinds of goals.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, we hope so. We have big goals and dreams for the show. Okay. Well, guys, if you are watching still, thank you so much for making it to the end. Let us know if you did make it to the end. Leave those words of encouragement for Lizzie in the comments. It means so much to her, to us. It boosts the algorithm, even if it's an emoji. We love to see that engagement. Liking obviously helps as well. Subscribing. hitting the bell so you don't miss any episodes. And if you want to support further, we do have a Patreon at patreon.com/cults2consciousness. We have some merch at cults2consciousness.com. And if you want to come hang out with us, we're doing our second trip we're going to Mexico this time. We went to Costa Rica. It was amazing. We have 5 people signed up already, and they are all people who went to Costa Rica. So they're like, let's do this round 2 in Mexico. So if you want to join, there are 3 more spots, I think, left at a discounted rate. The link is in the description below. If you like this episode, I'll link 2 more down here below. Go check out Lizzie's first episode. And until next time, follow your highest excitement, be conscious, and be well.